the um, the first step before you even get to Flourish is preparing your data. And um, yeah, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's definitely 90% of the work of kind of good data visualization is about getting the data in the right shape before you even start looking at the tool you're using to visualize it with. Um, so the best thing I've come across um, for kind of what makes a good data set, and what's the sort of shape it needs to be in, is this site cleansheet.org, which is just a single page site, but it just gives you a few tips on how to get your data looking great. And this, I mean, it's designed for people within government sharing data, or kind of releasing the data that they have. But actually it works in lots of different circumstances. So have a look at that. But the key point is you need one row for the headers, and that's a kind of limit within Flourish. You need one row then for each piece of data. Try to avoid using merge cells or borders or blank cells dividing different bits of information. um, and don't use colors to show information. So to show different categories of um, uh, person, for example, um, make sure that information's as used as text in a column by itself. And also don't include the totals at the bottom of the data. What you want is a table that shows just the data with one row per data item and one column per kind of field. And that makes a really nice data set, which will then very easily go into um, uh, into Flourish. So I've picked a sort of data set almost at random from the London Data Store. They've recently produced a series of measures looking at economic fairness, and one part of that is the labour market. And so this is a fairly simple data set looking at employees earning below the London living wage. And part of the reason I chose it was because it's got two aspects which I think will work quite well for our exercises today. So one is that it's got a look at the change over time, and there's a bit of a comparison with the UK there as well. So essentially the proportion of people who are earning below the London living wage over time. And there's also a look at the proportion by borough. So we can do our map across London with a different value for each borough. So you can download it directly from the link here. The sheets I've used are just these two here, and I just downloaded from there, or they are in a Dropbox folder. There's 4 files, so essentially the Excel files are the ones that are just exactly the ones that are on the London Data Store site, and then the CSV files are the sort of clean versions that I've produced, that will be used in the chart itself. And I'll show you what I've done to kind of produce those too. So this is what the data set looks like before cleaning. I've opened it in Dropbox here rather than in Excel, but hopefully it'll look, if you've opened it in Excel, it will look similar. So there's 4 tabs at the bottom. Let me zoom in a bit so it's easy to see. So there's 4 tabs at the bottom. The metadata is just kind of describes the data. They've got a summary page, which seems to be broken on this side, but these ones seem to be working. They've then got the more kind of detailed data for London, and then a comparison for the rest of the UK. Now you can see here some of those rules we were talking about in terms of what makes a good data set. They've not necessarily adhered to those. So we've got, this is a merge cell here, and there's a big merge cell at the top. They haven't put a total row because it's years. But yeah, we've got those kind of merge cells, and other than that, it's not too bad. They've not used any kind of colors to denote different things that we need to decode, or that kind of thing. But there's obviously lots of different figures in here. So this is the number of employees, I think in thousands potentially, earning below the London living wage, and then you've got a percentage of the whole all employees, and then this is a confidence variable, so basically tells you kind of what the range on this middle number is. And then we've got the same for male and female employees, and then some other breakdown by full-time employees and part-time employees. So lots of different figures there. We're going to be plotting the proportion of all employees, so this percentage column, which I think is column C on the if you've got it open in Excel. And then we're going to be plotting that against the UK. Again, we've got merged cells on here. We've got some data at the bottom that's not really data, that's kind of a note. But we've got all the same measures, and we've got slightly fewer years on this page. So you're welcome to kind of try and clean this data set yourself. What I've done, which is the file that's called employees earning below LLW clean.csv, is I've taken figures from two columns that we looked at. So the London column and the rest of UK, these are just the percentage figures. I've obviously lost a lot of the data here and just kind of concentrated on the two bits that I'm looking at. But we've got a row of column headings, a row for each year that we're going to be visualizing. They're blank rather than zero where we haven't got any data, and that's quite important for what the chart will look like. And I haven't got any totals or kind of averages there. So you can see, hopefully that makes sense in terms of how we've gone from the sort of raw data in the spreadsheet to this kind of clean version that's what we'll be using for the visualization itself. Okay, so yeah, this is what it looked like before, and then this was the sort of as an interim step, I kind of built this this version where they've got just a single row of headings.
Just a quick question, David.
Yeah, go for it.
So if you've gotten into the habit of formatting everything into tables, probably not.
Have I got into the habit?
No, I have.
Ah, okay.
So probably not do that.
Well, I think formatting into tables is fine. One of the issues with Flourish is they don't like Excel. So you do have to either copy and paste or convert it into CSV, in which case you kind of lose all that table formatting.
Okay.
But actually, I think the Excel formatting as table works quite well, because that only really works if you've got it in that kind of clean format to begin with. So actually it's probably quite a nice kind of discipline to get into, in terms of if it looks nice in the table, it probably means the underlying data is good.
Look at Alice. Thank you.
Okay, so if everyone's downloaded those files, then we'll start to make a simple chart. So yeah, quick check that everyone's kind of okay with that. You're welcome. It's probably, there might not be time now to kind of play around with the data itself in Excel, but I just wanted to make sure that there's definitely that thing of 90% of the effort is in getting the data in the right shape to begin with. And once you've done that, the actual process of creating the visualization gets a lot easier. Okay, so sorry.
Sorry, it's Fatin. I'm not too sure how am I supposed to download the data?
So hopefully,
and I've logged into Flourish.
Yep. So if you go into, if you've got this document open, the easiest way of doing it is right at the bottom here. There's a CSV for chart exercise, and hopefully, if you click on that link.
Okay, how was the I haven't even got this document.
Okay, let me share
It's in chat, Fatin. You might
Chat.
have a look in chat. There's a link to this document there, isn't there, David? Yeah.
Let me put it in chat
Yeah.
again. Okay. Oh, sorry. So yeah, at the bottom of there, there's a link, direct link that should download it into your downloads folder. And there's also the one underneath you'll need for the map exercise as well. Okay, if I get started with making the chart, and then we'll kind of see where everyone's got to. There's a few steps before we need the actual data. So let's get into Flourish. So when you first log into Flourish, you'll probably be taken to this page here, which looks like this. I've got lots of existing projects. You will probably have a kind of blank space. And then the way you get started is clicking on New Visualization in the top left-hand corner. And this is where you get a whole range of all the different chart types that we were talking about. There's the countdowns. There's you view different parliaments. They've even got, if you want to do a basketball chart, you can. A chart of a basketball court. But what we're looking for is a simple line chart. So I'm going for this one here, the standard way to show a time series. So we've got a series of values for each year. So a time series is what we're looking at. If you click on that, you're put into this interface, and you can see they've already got some example data in there. Now, the key thing with Flourish is you've got two different views. So this is called the preview view, and that shows you a kind of live version of what your chart looks like. But you're interested in the data view, which is, again, more like a sort of Excel view of what the data that's kind of powering your chart. And by default, for every different chart type, there's this kind of sample of data in there, so it's not just blank when you come in. But we want to upload our data. So what we need to do is click on the Upload Data button that's here, and then find the file that we downloaded. So it's this one, employees earning below LLW clean.csv. And just open that. And you see, get this warning about public versus private. This is what I was talking about earlier in terms of the kind of free tier for Flourish. So in terms of it will be publicly visible. As I said, that doesn't mean that Flourish are going to be, it's not going to be on the front page of the Flourish website or anything. They're not going to be tweeting about it, but it does mean that if someone's got the link to your visualization, they could then kind of see the underlying data. So this is where we do need to be careful with particularly sensitive data.
David, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
then?
of course.
The links that are created, I imagine there's some sort of a naming convention that Flourish uses to create these links. Are they, is that convention easily sort of, if a person were to be aware of that naming convention, could they kind of troll through and just see, oh, I'm going to type in this series of characters or this series?
Potentially, you get a number essentially. So this is 6498107. I don't know whether it goes up sequentially or whether it's a sort of randomly assigned number. Yeah, it's a good question. Potentially, someone could try and cycle through all 6.5 million kind of previous ones to see what there is, but yeah, I don't know kind of what the risk of that would be.
But it's it's a number used on the URL rather than the name that you might give to the
Right.
And is that the same if you haven't yet published it?
Yeah, so the sort of it says your data will be publicly visible. It's not really possible to access it until you have published it. So in a sense, it's sort of semi-private anyway. Yeah, I would certainly consider that anything you upload to Flourish here could well be found by someone. I think that's a kind of sensible way of thinking about it.
As long as the data is anonymized, I think it's, you have very little risk.
Exactly. So I'm going to click import publicly. Go private will take you to the kind of account upgrade page. And then we've got next, select the columns. So you can see here, it's replaced the data with our data. And then the other key part of the kind of data tab is this part on the right here. Let me just zoom out a bit so it's a bit easier to see. Where essentially we're selecting which of these columns are going to be viewed. So you can see here we've got the labels. So this is correct. We've got column A for the year. And then the values, it's got B to E, which was from the previous one. So we can change this to B to C. But you could also put just B in there if you just wanted to visualize one. Or you could put B, comma, C. So really, it could be that you've got a whole range of columns in there and you just want a couple to be shown. And then don't worry too much about these other ones, but you can see for different use cases, there may be other things that you want to do. So you can make a grid with different charts if you've got different categories. You can add a filter so that you only show some of the rows, or you can add kind of pop-ups that come on when you're loading the data. So yeah, so we've uploaded our data, and if we go back to preview, and you might have spotted this down in the bottom right hand corner as well, is a kind of live preview. It's changed the data, and we've now got our chart. So in a sense, that's kind of done, which is good. But what we've now got is the opportunity to kind of tweak the chart and turn it into something that's that looks a bit nicer. So by default, it's got, you'll see it's got a kind of curved lines between each. I slightly prefer it when those are straight. I think it looks a bit better. So under lines, dots and areas, there's a thing called line curve. So I can change that to straight. And that's just an example of all of these. You see there's loads of different options for customizing the data here. And you can really kind of go to town on the different options. So for example, there's a thing about shading the areas between lines. Does that work? No. You can switch on or off the dots. So there we are, just the lines, or have the dots, turn them into dots with a hole in the middle. Looks quite nice. You can change the colors that are used. So you might have brand colors that you want to add. There's a kind of range of different, you can have it in furrow and bold paint colors if you particularly want. Yeah, so that's all kind of customizable. You can add, if you do have those different filters, you might remember from some of the examples that we had, they had buttons across the top. So that's somewhere here where you can put in extra columns and be able to filter between those different columns. Yeah, so there's a whole kind of range of different options here for different things to do. You can see you've already by default got the ability to click on the legend and turn on or off some of these the lines. You can add headings to the axes to kind of label them. Yeah, so there's lots of different options for kind of displaying the data. So if we go back to the presentation, you can see this is the one I came up with a bit of tweaking. So some of the things I've added, I've changed the colors here. I've added a percentage to the end of the number. I've added labels to the charts. There's quite a neat thing where this is a subtitle, but you can set it so it picks up the name of each line and then puts it in the right color, which I think is quite a neat way of kind of showing the different things. I've added a source to the data and a couple of notes about the data. That's all in these options here. So it's really a whole range of things you can kind of play around with. It's very difficult to break it, so you can just kind of have a play, see what it does, and you've seen kind of how easy it is to create it. So worst case scenario, create a new chart, upload the data again, and start from scratch. Yeah, does anyone have any questions at this point? Has anyone kind of not managed to get to the state where you've got a chart?
Hi, David.
Yeah, that's a really good point on accessibility. So yes, right under here we've got the possibility to add a description for the screen reader, and this button above essentially means whether it will tell screen readers to essentially ignore everything that's in here and just read the description. So certainly it's definitely good practice to add a description there. My understanding is there's some debate over exactly what kind of information should go into that description, but essentially I would put in, what's the main thing that you would want someone to take away from this chart? So you may want to kind of describe the shape of the lines and how they can kind of converge at the end and the difference between the two. Yeah, you're right in terms of the other things. Some of the defaults that are set are not necessarily the most kind of accessible. I think particularly the kind of contrast for the labels on the axes is not great. And again, I've not done very well in terms of blue and purple is not great for distinguishing between. It's probably largely up to you in terms of choosing the colors, choosing the font sizes, and that kind of thing in terms of making sure that the chart is kind of readable.
I don't see anywhere in the colors for me to choose like an RGB or CMYK value or hex value for colors.
So if you click Edit Color Palette, this is where you can come in. So you can either sort of create your own from scratch, I think, or you can edit your own here. So this is where you would do that. And again, they can be either your brand colors or kind of accessible versions of those.
Apologies, I see that now. Thank you.
Yeah, and I definitely, I mean, the approach I tend to take with this is that if it's making it accessible is about making it kind of a chart that's accessible will be kind of readable for everyone, no matter what kind of, if they have a disability or kind of visual impairment, then really the kind of things that will work for those people will work for everyone. And actually a good chart is one where you can read all the labels and distinguish between the colors, no matter what. So so it's a really good point. So there's lots of options, and once you've got that right, then that's when you come to the kind of publishing step. And you'll see up in the top right hand corner, oh yes, and I would say give it a name, mainly so that this name is only visible to you when it's in your kind of library of projects, but I've definitely got lots called untitled visualization that I now no longer know what they are, so definitely give it a name. And then you've got this export and publish button. Now at the moment it's not published, which means people can't see it, but there is a publish to share and embed button, and it gives you a warning about who can see it. But if you click on publish, it will then give you a link to this chart. And in terms of your question, Romina, in what it looks like, so it won't take in this information in the top left. It just gives you the chart. Oh, sorry, it does say by who it is. They give themselves credit. I think that's one of the things you can kind of switch off if you've got the paid version. And yeah, this is kind of what it looks like by itself. It's also possible. This code here will give you a sort of embedded version, and I'm pretty sure, I can't check it. I'm pretty sure that doesn't have lots of the kind of the stuff around it, so it will just embed this bit, potentially with a little credit to Flourish as well. So it's definitely worth kind of checking that out when you do it. And you can also download. So downloading HTML to sort of directly put in your page is a premium feature, but downloading an image is possible with the free, and it will give you the option of kind of what size you want it. So that's quite nice if you're putting in reports or slideshows or whatever. You can also, so my browser's got screenshotting based in. You can also use the kind of standard Windows screenshot tool to take a picture of it if you want as well.
Quick question, David. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Am I to understand that the work that you do is not saved until you publish? Is that correct?
So the work you do is always saved. In order, the publishing is more about the kind of public version.
Fine. Okay.
And that can be quite useful in that if I do something here, so if I change the color palette, you'll see this goes yellow, and that essentially means that the published version is out of date with the kind of saved version. So that's quite nice in that you can then kind of play around with it, change it, and then when you click on here now, it says republish, and it won't update to the changed version until you clicked on that republish button. So yeah, if I refresh this now, that's still got the same colors. If I press republish, hopefully if it does it quick enough, yeah, so it's now changed those colors. So yeah, that's definitely useful in terms of being able to kind of add data and not have everything immediately appear on the live version. But yeah, in terms of, you don't need to save it at all. It will automatically save every time you make a change.
So although there's not the dynamic linking of data, you can still republish to the, if you have it on your website, you're not having to go back
exactly
over and having to embed again.
Yeah, so if I got a new year's a new year of data, I can either even kind of manually add it in here, or upload a new data set, and it will kind of it will update, and then I just need to click republish, and it will add that new year's worth of data. Okay. Any other questions from anyone before we move on to maps?
I've got to quickly ask about, I'm drawn to that create a story option at the top. Yeah.
So the create a story, and you may have seen this in some of the other ones before. Essentially, this allows you to create almost a slideshow with different visualizations, and you can either use different versions of the same visualization. So you might do a version where one of the legend items is switched off and then one with it back on, or you can use different different visualizations and kind of create a slideshow with those. And I think you can even do things like embed images, and it's not a kind of fully featured slideshow editor, but it is it does have some possibility of adding headings and images and things. A bit like the visualizations themselves, you can then embed this You can add captions, and yeah, you can set it. I think you can even add audio, so you can add a commentary over the top if you wanted. So it's quite a powerful tool for creating a kind of story of visualizations through. So yeah, I won't go into this in too much detail.
But probably quicker than downloading individual image files and adding them into PowerPoint. You can presumably export into PDF or something, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure what. No, I don't
Oh,
think you can export it. So yeah, it may not work well with other kind of slideshow thing. I would see it more as a as something for kind of embedding in your website rather than doing slideshows with necessarily.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a sort of powerful tool, and I've definitely used that in terms of what's quite nice with the if you remember the survey tool from the examples I was showing, where you could, there's loads of different options to kind of group them together. Normally, if you've just got that visualization, it doesn't remember what options you've got selected. But if you use it in story mode, you can kind of, yeah, you can select different options in different slides and take people through the data. So that's quite nice. And all the circles sort of move around in a nice way when you change slides. So it's quite swish. Cool. And this works with any of the visualizations, so the maps that we're looking at and things are included, and it's saved in your. So if I go back to my projects, you see the story just looks a bit different because it's got the sort of stack of cards there. Okay.